Hi, everyone. My name is Chelsea Jander, Senior Park Project Manager. I'll be your host for this evening. We're going to wait just a couple minutes and then we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation.
Can you see me? Hello?
Hi there. Yeah, all right. So we'll go ahead and get started just real quick. And let me introduce you. So we'll get started. For those of you just joined, my name is Chelsea Jander, Senior Park Project Manager, and I'll be your host. Before we jump into the presentation, I wanted to recognize a special guest we have with us this afternoon. Vice Chair Nora Vargas is an advocate for the environmental justice and cleanup of the Tijuana River Valley. I'm honored to introduce her this afternoon. Vice Chair, I'm passing the meeting on to you.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here today, and I wanted to say thank you for all of the work that all of you have been doing, particularly around this issue. I'm really happy and grateful for all of you for being here today. This is a very important public meeting for our Smuggler's Gulch Improvement Project. I want to take a moment first to thank Parks and Rec staff for your hard work in bringing this project forward. When I started my tenure, I started by addressing the Tijuana River Valley as a top priority for the County of San Diego. and we declared the Tijuana River Valley a public health care crisis. In declaring the pollution at the Tijuana River Valley a public health care crisis, the county acknowledged that the diverse sources of contamination have directed, they have a direct correlation to health outcomes in South County and coastal communities. And for us as, as a public health care agency for the region, the county, along with federal, state, and other local agencies, we believe we have a responsibility to address the issues head on to improve the overall health of residents in our binational region. And the Tijuana River Valley extends beyond its environmental justice impacts to a public health concern as well. As many of you know, last year, the County of San Diego received $10 million from Smuggler's Gulch via a grant from the State Coastal Conservancy. And so the goal of the projects are to really reduce trash and capture sediment on a much larger scale that current conditions into the river valley and reduce the occurrence of flooding and the intersection of Smuggler's Gulch and Monument Road. There are two components of the project. The first is the sedimentation basin, which is a depression in land where water from the gulch will flow into the water, will slow down, and the sediments will have time to settle. The sediments basins will include trash booms. Both the basin and the booms will be routinely maintained to remove trash and sediment. And then the second part of the project is to improve the outflow of the basin as water heads north through the culvert, which is an underpass for water to flow under a road. The project will replace the existing culvert under Monument Road with a larger culvert to reduce flooding on the road crossing. So I just wanted to really say thank you to everyone for being here today with your input. We're going to be able to implement this project with great success. I'm super excited to see what's going to come and what's to come. And I'm really looking forward to hearing everybody's thoughts tonight. And I am going to go ahead and be here for a while. I have another event that I have to go to, but I'm going to try to stay as long as I can and make sure that I get to listen in. And I'm going to turn off my camera, but I will be listening in and making sure that we're taking notes as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for those words, Vice Chair, and thanks so much for being here this afternoon. All right, so with me today, along with the Vice Chair, is our project team from the Department of Parks and Recreation and the Department of Public Works. We're going to be giving a brief update on the Smuggler's Gulch Improvement Project, as the Vice Chair had mentioned. But before we get into the details, we're going to go over a bit of housekeeping for this virtual meeting format. So we are using a Zoom webinar platform. Let me go ahead and advance the slides here. And so you won't have access to the microphone or the camera, but you will be able to write in with your questions using the Q&A feature. Just click on the Q&A icon in your toolbar and type in your question. We'll either respond directly in the answer section, or we'll do our best to address your comments in the live Q&A session at the end of the presentation. You may also want to write down the phone number and meeting ID number on the screen. You can use this to call in if you lose your internet connectivity at any point during the meeting. A recorded version will also be available online after the presentation is complete. We will share the links at the end of the presentation, and they'll be available on the project website. And just a quick note, if you are on a mobile device, the Q&A feature is located on the bottom right of your screen. So a quick round of introductions. As I've mentioned, my name is Chelsea Jander, and I am the project manager for this project. I have with me a robust team from our Operations and Resource Management Division, from DPR, Department of Parks and Recreation, as well as representation from the Department of Public Works. Kieran Carr is our environmental planner for the project, and Jessica Geisler, our marketing and public outreach manager, will help us with the questions and answer section at the end of the presentation. For now, I'm going to hand off the presentation to Kieran, who's going to provide an overview of the environmental planning efforts of the Tijuana River Valley.
Thank you, Chelsea. Hi, everyone. I'll be sharing a little bit of background on the Tijuana River Valley and really how this project came about. So in March 2020, the county completed a needs and opportunities assessment for the Tijuana River Valley. During that time, we reached out to many of you through a combination of public meetings and targeted stakeholder outreach to hear your thoughts on a variety of projects to address the cross-border flows of sewage, trash, and sediment coming from Mexico and being transported into the Tijuana River Valley. Through that outreach, we identified 27 priority projects with a goal of accomplishing as many of the projects as possible in the future. 2 of the projects we identified in the study, projects 10 and 11, have now been combined and are known as the Smuggler's Gulch Improvement Project. These projects address stormwater, sediment, and trash issues in Smuggler's Gulch through the addition of a sediment basin, replacement of an undersized culvert, and the addition of trash capture devices in the area. This project was prioritized as it was the only drainage area in the Tijuana River Valley that doesn't currently have any stormwater protection. As the supervisor mentioned, these projects are funded through a California State Coastal Conservancy grant for $10 million, which was awarded in May of 2021, and includes funding for the planning, design, permitting, and construction of the project. Next slide, please, Chelsea. The project is located in Smuggler's Gulch, which you can kind of see here in the big picture view, which runs north and south from the US-Mexico border and intersects Monument Road about a quarter mile or so west of Hollister Street. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn it back to you here.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen, for that overview. So now we're going to get into the details of the Gulch. So including the existing conditions and then the project overview. Presently, there are temporary efforts to address stormwater and sediment transport at Smuggler's Gulch, including the trash booms, which are captured trash flowing through the Gulch, and dredging where sediment and non-floatable items are removed from the Gulch. Annual dredging costs vary, but are approximately $500,000 per year. These efforts are not sufficient as a long-term solution, given the high volume and velocity of stormwater flowing through the Gulch. The existing conditions also include an occasionally flooded Monument Road at the intersection of the Gulch and the road, as the vice chair had mentioned. All right, so the goals of the project are to reduce trash and capture sediment on a much larger scale than we are currently able to do with those temporary measures. To achieve this goal, 3 primary project components were determined to meet those needs: a sedimentation basin, a new culvert under Monument Road, and trash capture infrastructure. The first is the sedimentation basin, which is a depression in which the land where the water from the Gulch flow into, and then the water will slow down through the basin and the sediment will have time to settle. The second part of the project is to improve the outflow of the basin as water heads north through the culvert, which is an underpass for water to flow under a road. The project will replace the existing culvert under Monument Road with a larger culvert to reduce flooding of the road crossing. The third aspect of the project is to install trash capture infrastructure, like the trash booms depicted here, which capture floating debris on the surface of the water flows. Both the basin and the booms would be routinely maintained to remove trash and sediment. So the county is currently working on the preliminary design for the project. We are evaluating options that compare design alternatives for the sedimentation basin based on a set of the evaluation criteria listed here on this slide. The criteria includes environmental preservation, viewshed, groundwater depth, constructability, maintenance requirements, permitting, easement requirements, access, and cost. The criteria were developed to help create a balanced project that brings the greatest environmental benefits while meeting long-term operational and maintenance needs. An environmental analysis was completed in 2021, and environmental permitting is currently underway. Locations both north and south of Monument Road were considered for the basin. The locations north of the road were deemed not feasible for several reasons. The area is within the FEMA Special Flood Hazard Area and Regulatory Floodway that prohibits encroachment. Also, the area is more susceptible to flood events that would actually wash away any captured storm and sediment and trash. Once we complete the study evaluation, we'll move on to the construction document phase with engineering and permitting of the project. We plan to complete that portion of the project spring 2023 before we move into procurement and construction. There are 2 designs that we are considering for the sedimentation basin. These basins would be built on county land that is used for our current annual dredging efforts. An earlier concept had a basin that was fit only within the main channel of the Gulch, which is on the left side of the basin seen on this slide. But after studying groundwater levels over the course of a year, we realized that the high level of groundwater would not allow us to create a basin within that footprint, as it wouldn't be deep enough to be effective. The footprint expanded to include where we currently stage for our annual dredging efforts. Both alternatives that you'll see here and here on the next slide would have H-pile posts. They're like large goalposts upstream of the basin to capture large non-floatable items. This design here creates an offline basin that has a slightly smaller overall area that reduces the amount of concrete needed. Large storm events would push the water flowing directly down the Gulch, similar to how the water flows now. This alternative also has one less trash boom than the inline design, which we will look at next. All right, here is the inline basin alternative. Water flows from the south and flows through the trash boom in the first basin before going into the second basin. In large storm events, similar to the other design, the water would flow along the bank of the Gulch, similar to existing. Both alternatives have nearly the same footprint and achieve substantially similar sedimentation capture results. The inline basin has 2 trash booms, which increases the opportunity to achieve our goal of their third goal of the project. We received a question on what the sedimentation basin may look like from the road. So we have worked with our design team to provide a rendering, which you will see here. Here's what the sedimentation basin may look like from Monument Road. There's sufficient existing vegetation screening. However, we plan to add additional vegetation as part of the succession planning to ensure that the area is screened for years to come. There are invasive species as well on site, so we will be treating those as part of the project, and we will be enhancing the vegetation to include native trees and plants. So another part of the project is to address the flooding at Monument Road by increasing the size of the culvert that is under the road. Here's a picture of the existing condition from the road on the left. And on the right is a picture of the culvert from the perspective of the Gulch. The project addresses the flooding issue by allowing the water to go through the larger culvert, and as a result, less flooding would occur in this area. The design replaces the existing culvert with minimal change to the road alignment. The new culvert would allow over 8 times the capacity of the existing culvert. All right, the last part of the project is to capture trash, which is a function of the future design. Trash booms, pictured here, capture those floatable wastes. There's also those H-pile posts that I had mentioned to capture the non-floatable items as depicted on the right. Both basins and booms routinely maintained to remove trash and sediment. So this brings us to the project timeline. We are working on our 30% design now. As the design progresses, we anticipate holding another public meeting this fall and completing final plans next spring 2023. This would set us up for construction to start summer 2023. We're also working with the City of San Diego for all the necessary permitting, and this will track concurrently with our design phase. So for next steps, we will continue to work on the design, and we'll come back to you all to provide a project update in the fall. Please stay connected by checking out our website or contact me if you have any questions or comments. That concludes our presentation, and we are happy to answer any questions that you might have. And as a reminder, we are using the webinar platform, so you won't have access to the microphone or camera, but you will be able to write in any questions or comments using the Q&A feature. Just click on the Q&A icon in your toolbar and type in your question. With that, I'd like to open it up for questions and turn things over to Jessica Geisler, who will help us moderate the Q&A session.
All right, thank you so much, Chelsea. Great presentation. I look forward to hosting the Q&A portion of tonight's meeting. Thanks again to all of the participants who have logged on. This is an exciting project, and I imagine you have many questions. So just to reiterate, if you have questions, use that Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen, or depending on what type of device you're using, it could be somewhere else. And then I'm going to be reading those questions out loud and also figuring out the best staff member to respond. So I'm going to kick things off with our first question from Mitchell. Mitchell is asking, how does the county intend to address or protect the known aquifer in the current channel just south of the intersection of Monument Road? All right, so I think this actually would be a great question for our consultant, Mark. Mark, are you on the line? Okay.
I'll take a shot at it, Scott. When we were looking at the basin design and primarily looking at how we can capture as much sediment as possible, we looked at the groundwater levels to make sure we weren't having the basin floor lower than the current groundwater level. So we allowed at least a 1 foot freeboard between the groundwater levels and the basin. So that was primarily to avoid having seepage and groundwater taking up capacity within the basins, as opposed to, what impacts perhaps the sediment basin or the capture of sediment and flood flows in those basins will have on the aquifer. That is not something that we looked at analysis. Kind of addressing the fact that, we do have the low flow diversion upstream of the basins that's designed to capture, the more high pollutant low flows that cross the border. The sediment basins will capture additional flow, which will no doubt allow additional trash as well as pollutants potentially to settle out and filter through the ground below the basin. And again, that's not something we looked at specifically in our design, so I'm not sure I can answer beyond that. I know that's a big aspect and certainly a big focus of the operations of the basin to make sure that we are continuing to track that. And I don't know if something similar is done at Goat Canyon. Chris, I don't know, State Parks, if you can answer anything to that, if there's any specific issues that might be relevant from Goat Canyon, but I'm not aware of anything at this point.
And I can jump in and kind of follow up to Mark's, answer kind of at a very high level. Most of the Tijuana River Valley has a very high groundwater. And part of the goal of this project is to ensure that we're protecting the water quality. And that is ultimately the overall goal for any project that we're doing in the River Valley, not just this one. This one's focused on, removing the sediment and the trash, but also protecting the water quality. So that is a key component of our design to ensure that we're doing that. And just FYI, Mark, Chris won't be able to jump in because he'd only be able to type in an answer, not be able to speak. So
yeah,
hopefully,
thank you. That's right.
yeah.
All right, thank you, Mark and Deb. Deb, while I have you here, I have a question here about maintenance. This comes from Mary. Mary's asking if the county is going to do routine maintenance or if bids will be sought from private contractors.
Thank you, Mary, and welcome, and appreciate you joining us to this public meeting. So, we are still, right now we're working on design and the maintenance of the basin. And I know, Mary, you're aware, and a lot of you are aware, this project has been a partnership with many agencies, not just led by the county. We've had the regional board, the city of San Diego, Cal EPA, US EPA, state parks. A lot of agencies have been either actively involved in this project or a big supporter. And maintenance of the sediment basin, once it's constructed, is something that definitely needs to be discussed and figured out. And as part of our grant, it is a requirement that we come up with a maintenance plan. And so we are working with all the agencies to identify whether what agency would be taking the lead on that, or it could be multiple agencies. So we're still trying to figure that out, but that's a great question. It's definitely something that's on our mind, and it's something that we need to really resolve, and we will resolve before we get into construction, and we will be coming out to the public and making sure you understand what our maintenance will be and who will be implementing the maintenance.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Deb. Our next question comes in from Vivian. Vivian's saying the trash boom that has been at Smuggler's Gulch these past years do not appear to have worked well with a lot of trash flowing beyond the east and west ends of that boom. Is the design going to use already known trash boom designs or create a new boom design? And I'd like to give this one to Chelsea.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jessica. And thank you, Vivian, for asking the question. So yes, we have been working with some partners for like I had mentioned, the temporary way to address the trash, right, as part of our temporary part of the maintenance of the Gulch. So yes, we will be looking at alternative designs and anything that's going to be more of a permanent infrastructure to reduce as much as we can the trash that would flow beyond the sedimentation basin area. So yes, that is part of our design and part of what we're looking at and investigating, and we'll definitely be able to report back more once we get further in the design phase, and we'll have that as an update in the fall.
Great, thanks, Chelsea. I'd like to keep you here because we have a question regarding the project timeline. I don't know if you want to pull back up that slide that you shared with us earlier, but Olga is asking how long the project will last and if there's going to be an alternate access road to the campground while it's being built.
Sure, let me pull up that slide.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know there's just a couple things. All right, so yes, thanks so much, Jessica and Olga, for asking that question. So we don't currently have an estimated construction timeline just because of where we're at. We're pretty early in the design phase. But what we will do is we will look to find ways to maintain access to the campground and also to the estuary and the state park facility as well. So that is something that we're looking at now, even though we're very early in the design phase, to make sure that the community can still access beyond the Gulch as we're going through the construction phase.
Thank you, Chelsea. And hoping you might be able to help us with this question. Where will or does that trash go when it's captured in terms of landfilling or recycling?
Sure, I can take that one as well. So ultimately, we do have the temporary effort of dredging the Gulch at the moment, and when we do that, we also look at the trash that's accumulated as well, tires, that sort of thing, and so we do recycle as much of that component as possible, and try and reduce our landfill and GHG as much as possible. So yes, that is part of the project, and we are looking at ways to incorporate that as part of our operations and maintenance of that future facility as well.
All right, we appreciate that update. And just out of curiosity, is there a way for folks who are on this meeting to see that original study which listed the 27 projects?
Yeah, I can jump in here, Jessica. We're going to put that link in the chat so everyone has access to that SB 507 study, and they can read everything. It's on our website, so we'll get that out to everybody.
Awesome, thanks, Deb. Okay, we have a question about sediment. The question is from D. Woodward saying, how much sediment comes down Smugglers each year? How much sediment will the basins hold? I think this is a great question for our development team. So I'm sorry, our environmental team. Karen, do you want to take a stab at that one?
It's possible she's multitasking, trying to get the link into the chat.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I don't know how much the basins will hold the new one, so I'm going to have to rely on Chelsea to answer that. But I do believe that each year what we're dredging varies. And again, Chelsea, when you jump in, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's anywhere from 4,000 to maybe 10,000 cubic yards that we currently dredge every year. That fluctuates based off of how much we're able to dredge and the cost of dredging, which continues to go up every year. So we're not able to quite dredge as much as we have in the past. And then in terms of how much the basins hold, Chelsea, are you aware of that?
So at this point, we're still pretty early in the design phase to be able to answer that completely. And that's one thing that we're looking at, just like we're thinking about construction now, we're also thinking about our operations and maintenance of the facility. And so one thing that we are looking at is determining the capacity, right, of that sedimentation basin before it needs to be serviced. And that does vary depending on the amount of sediment that is transported through Smuggler's Gulch. It's not necessarily the same amount year after year. So that is something that we're looking at, and therefore our operations and maintenance would kind of have to fluctuate based on kind of what is currently in the facility at the time.
Thank you, Chelsea. All right, we have a couple of environmental questions here. One of them is coming from Vivian, asking if the environmental review has been completed for this project. Should we pull Deb up?
Yeah, I'm going to actually, Karen, are you online? Can you talk about our environmental review that we've done?
Yep, I was just going to jump in at the same time. So great question. So the environmental analysis, we've done the CEQA analysis on this project already, but we are still in the process of completing environmental permitting. So the environmental permitting is ongoing. We're in consultation with the Fish and Wildlife Service, the CDFW, and the Regional Board and the Army Corps regarding those pieces. So part of it's complete, part of it's ongoing, and we'll, environmental stewardship is something we do throughout the project. So we'll be continuing that throughout the entire phase, that the whole timeline that you see on the screen, essentially.
Thank you so much, Karen. Another environmental question we have here is coming from Mitchell. Mitchell's asking if there are going to be any efforts to monitor water quality in Smuggler's Gulch.
I can take that, Jessica. At this time, we haven't figured out exactly what monitoring we may or may not do in the future once the project is implemented. But that's a great point, Mitchell, and that's something that we can take note of. I do think it would be great to be able to do some monitoring after it's done.
All right, thanks, Deb. Okay, we have a question from Ellis Martin asking, how will this project affect the residents that live across the street, as well as our horse boarders and renters? This would be a great question for Sandy.
Hi, everybody. So there are really a couple components, as we mentioned, to the project. So for the culvert, the idea behind upsizing would allow for additional water to go underneath the road. So the idea is then we would have less flooding in the road, and as the storms are going through, we would see more movement. For the sedimentation basins, they would be where we currently have trucks that stage now when we do our annual dredging of Smuggler's Gulch, or there shouldn't be any other effects other than capturing the sediment within the basins themselves. And the trash booms, again, would be a replacement for what we've temporarily had there, and now would be more of a permanent solution.
All right, thanks, Sandy. Teresa is asking where the link is. Great question. There should be a chat field in this meeting. It's been disabled for members just so we can keep the event going, but you should be able to open that chat window, and that is where the link has been added. So take a look there. If you're having any difficulty, we're happy to send information out later. Make sure you connect with Chelsea and get on her distribution list. She certainly can help forward any materials that you're looking for and provide additional project information. All right, we have a question from, I guess it's more of a statement from Mary Johnson Powell. Currently, the road crossing is an Arizona crossing and is designed to have temporary floodwater cross it. The flooding there rarely lasts more than a couple of hours as the rain lessens. A large culvert underneath the road seems like an unnecessary expense due to the very temporary impassability of this road. Thank you very much for that comment, Mary. I'd like to actually see if Chelsea wants to provide some more information about the design and why it might be changing based on the current situation.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks, Mary, for asking this question. So yes, the current road, you can kind of see in this photo here, it's a little bit blurry, but it does have an Arizona crossing, which means that it is designed that way to have that dip to allow for the storm flows to go over it. The idea behind the upsizing of the culvert, so right now it's corrugated metal pipe. which means that it's a deteriorating infrastructure already. So one of the ways that we're going to be improving the passability of the area is by having reinforced concrete box culverts. So it's a significantly improved technology to allow for the passability. And you can see in this photo here, that is the corrugated metal pipe is very small. And so we're as part of our alternatives analysis, we've looked at multiple designs for the box culvert and the way to improve the flooding situation. And we're working with the city of San Diego to finalize that design in the permitting component. But right now we're looking at really limiting the increase of the size, like at least the height of the road in order for us to have the water flow under the road. And then with the bonus of the sedimentation basin being in place upstream, we won't have as much clogging at the culvert area either. So a couple different things that we have been thinking about for the culvert component. So feel free to reach out if you have any other questions on this topic.
Awesome. Thank you, Chelsea. So just a reminder, this is a great time to connect with folks. We have all of our experts here on the meeting right now. So if you have any questions about this project, you have a wonderful panel to help respond. So please feel free to keep dropping those in that Q&A pane. We have a question from Mary. Mary is asking, how much of the existing canyon flora and fauna will remain after the sediment pond and truck pad is built? There's no other canyon habitat in the area to which existing species can move, as it is either a hillside or valley floor. This is a wonderful comment and question, and it's on the environmental side of things. So I want to see if Karen wants to assist with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you know, we're still in the early phases of design, and our goal is always going to be, and for this project especially, is to minimize disturbance to the flora and fauna and the Tijuana River Valley as a whole. So right now what we're doing is evaluating some of that and making sure we're kind of maintaining and staying on the disturbed surfaces as much as possible. So it's going to be a little bit of an ongoing as we move forward into design and kind of flesh out those details, but we can probably get to that a little bit further at the next public meeting or at the next check-in.
Sorry, I had my microphone off. Just another question while I have you here, Karen. When we look at the environment where we're building or making changes, if there are opportunities to plant new native vegetation for the area, is that something that's typically baked into the development plan?
Great question, Jessica. Absolutely. So that is something we try to do as much of as possible. So in this project, especially, what we're going to try and do is any area that we can plant additional screening, especially closer to the road, and even in other areas where we can kind of remove some of the non-native or invasive habitat and plant native habitat there. That's our goal. So anything that we can do, we will be doing, and kind of removing some of that and really restoring some of the area that is currently either disturbed or invasive and just not the best quality in some of the areas. So we will certainly be doing quite a bit of native planting in the area.
Wonderful, thank you. I saw some of that over at the campground. Some wonderful new vegetation and wildflowers out there, which makes that trail experience so much more special. So thank you for all you do there. We don't have any other questions now. I'm going to give folks a second. I'm wondering, Sandy, if you want to talk at all about some of the partners that we have in the area, the coordination that we have with the city of San Diego.
Sure. Sorry. So we are partnered with the city of San Diego, who helped us partner as we were going forward with the Coastal Conservancy grant. And we continue to work with them as we develop our plans and designs for the project components. So we're excited to make sure that as we are designing the projects, that they're also meeting the needs of the jurisdiction and creating, assets that will be of value to the community for the future.
Great, thank you. All right, so I don't see any other questions. Oh, there's one. All right.
And Jessica,
Thanks, guys.
Jessica, can I jump in
Oh,
and
sure.
piggyback on what Sandy just said? Because, you know, we've mentioned our partners on this project, but obviously the Coastal Conservancy is a huge partner. We wouldn't have this project if it wasn't from the $10 million in funding. And so we definitely appreciate the partnership with the Coastal Conservancy ongoing, not just giving us the funding, but just a continuous support in the Tijuana River Valley for many projects, including this one. It's very important partnership. So thank you.
Thanks, Deb. It's a complicated area with a lot of partners, and it's just wonderful to be able to collaborate with them so we can make this project as great as possible for the maximum impact to help improve the situation down there. All right, so we have a question from Mary. Mary is asking, across the street, the city maintenance pad area, she's saying it's already a severely disturbed habitat. Why not just widen the existing gulch there and use that as a sediment basin without a concrete base? That sounds like another wonderful development question that I'm going to hand over to Chelsea.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to try and get to the map a little bit so we can look at hopefully what was in reference. So here we have where we're having our proposed basin area and the culvert is called out here. I'm not sure you can see my mouse, but then I think what's in reference is just north of Monument Road. And so we did, as a team, look at the possibility of utilizing the north section of Monument Road to see if it's possible for us to use a sedimentation basin there. And unfortunately, it is in a FEMA special hazard floodway, so we are unable to, it has some restrictions around it. So because it's in that floodway, we are unable to consider it for the functionality of the sedimentation basin. Especially because then if that area does flood, then all of that sedimentation, the sediment and the trash that we had captured would flow down and further into the Tijuana River. So that's what we're trying to avoid. And so that's why we looked at the kind of more southern section, the upstream section for the location of the basin.
All right, thanks, Chelsea, for that explanation. We have a wonderful comment that came in here from David. David saying the San Diego Water Board strongly supports the Smuggler's Gulch Improvement Project and has recommended it to the State Water Resources Control Board for additional funding through SB 170, which will be decided by mid-July 2022. The Water Board thanks Vice Chair Vargas for her leadership and the county staff and consultants for their hard work on this and other projects in the River Valley. Thank you. That was a wonderful comment. We'll add that to all of the notes from tonight's meeting. All right, let me see here. We have a question here from Mary. Mary's saying, oh, we actually just got that one. My apologies. We have one from Vivian. Vivian saying all the work in the River Valley seems to be eliminating native habitat and public park lands. Will we ever get new land preserved and returned to the public to replace the areas that are compromised and removed from use? This is a wonderful question. I'm going to see if Deb, do you want to answer this? She might actually.
I can jump in, Jessica, if that's all right.
Perfect.
So really appreciate the comment, Vivian. And, you know, I think a lot of you know that Parks has a dual mission. So we have a dual mission of both providing recreation and then also preserving important habitat. So, you know, it's a big part of what we're doing in the River Valley. And so just as kind of a point, this entire area is part of our multiple species conservation program. And we have and continue to buy a lot of land in this area to do just that, what you're talking about, to do preservation, and there's a lot of restoration efforts going on as well. Regarding the public use, this area is actually not part of our public park that's open to the public. So this project specifically won't be affecting any of our existing parkland.
Great, thanks, Crystal. All right, I think that actually does it. I don't see any additional questions coming in here, but I will give you just one more minute. Chelsea, do you want to pull back up your contact information so folks have it and can get on your distribution list if they have further questions? There you go. Thank you so much.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. So we will have a copy of this presentation made available on our website, stparks.org. If you go to that website, there's a plans tab and you can click on public meetings. We'll provide that link as well. But thank you, Chelsea, for the opportunity to host the Q&A session. We appreciate all of the comments and questions that came through. It really helps us as we move forward with this project. So I'm going to hand it back to Chelsea.
All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for joining and hanging in there as we go through all the questions and answers section. Just thanks so much to the State Coastal Conservancy for the grant funding and for all of our project partners who are online, but also just with us throughout the project process. We look forward to reaching out to you all again in the fall with an update on our design and permitting process. And so feel free if you have any questions between now and then, or you'd like to be added to our email distribution list, please email me directly or feel free to give me a call and I can make sure you receive that flyer electronically directly for our next one. All right, thanks so much, everybody, and have a great night.